Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for Tuesday, July 25th, 2017. Thought I'd come back for today. Things are starting to look interesting, so we're going to be here all week. I had said yesterday that we would wait until Wednesday. Well, I decided we needed more, so here we are. I want to show you this, the Reynolds method of the sea surface temperature anomalies for the Atlantic Basin averaged over the past week. So this is valid the 22nd, and so remember it is a weekly, see right there, a weekly temperature anomaly. And I want to point out something very important, that a good deal of the tropical Atlantic through here, a half a degree to a solid 1 degree Celsius above the long-term average. But look at the Gulf of Mexico, pretty much the whole area now, a half a degree to a degree Celsius above average. The Caribbean Sea pretty much the same way. But then look right up here, tucked up into the northwest Atlantic. Very, very, very warm compared to average. Some of these in here looking like 2 degrees Celsius above normal here, up against Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, and just southwest of Long Island. So the northwest Atlantic a lot warmer than normal. That tends to promote ridging. Later in the season, stronger ridges of high pressure, and since this is anchored up here, well, just imagine if we have stronger ridging here instead of over here as we get into late August into September. I want to be careful that I'm not speculating, but merely looking back at what we have seen in the past that helps to understand how we might figure out the patterns for the future. There's never going to be a lock where, well, I say never, maybe 50 years from now, we can get closer to that. But in today's world, you go and you look at patterns. Joe Bastardi has taught me a lot about pattern recognition just by reading what he has written over the years. Some of the political stuff that he talks about and some of the busts that he has had, notwithstanding, he is still, I think, a pioneer in his field because he has pointed these things out. The same thing with DT, Dave Tolaris at Weather Risk. You learn from people, Larry Cosgrove, and there are others, okay? So you learn in a collective sense. The internet gives us that opportunity. So I'm just making sure you understand, when I see something like this, all this very warm water compared to average and what it has related to in the past can help us understand the future. And if we were to get an active tropical wave train with an active main development region here, this may signify where they might end up. Not a guarantee, but it is something to look for. If the water was much colder than average up here in the northwest Atlantic, then that would likely paint a different picture. We'll see, but the writing is certainly on the wall, and we need to pay attention to it. I want to show you this as well. The African dust really starting to abate as of late. You can see here that the northern, the southern extent of it is getting here just north of Dakar, here Cape Verde in Africa, and the thickest of the dust and the Saharan air layer itself now up here by the Canary Islands. We're not seeing this coming off and overwhelming the pattern all through here. This is very light and at the lower end of the scale over here. You can clearly see that. And like I say, it's a time, it just takes time. We all watch the pot boil together. You know how they say, a watched pot never boils. Well, eventually it does, despite the saying, the metaphor. It does boil eventually, and the tropics and the Atlantic are very likely to do just that. And these are all of the things that go into that. I mean, look here over to the west, the Saharan dust has all but mixed out. So, it's late July. I think it's just a matter of a few weeks, and things are going to start to get interesting. Looking at the African waves themselves, not very active right now. Overall, we are seeing somewhat of a suppressed pattern through this region, but there's still plenty of energy available over the continent, and it's just a matter of time before it becomes more robust, and we change the pattern in the Atlantic Basin, and things start to change to where we get these to develop. And it's the natural tendency as well. This is not just Oh, you're just saying that because you want people to visit your site or to watch your videos. Well, I mean, you look at the progression of the season and how it's supposed to go, assuming there's no El Nino, which we don't have. Is the Atlantic warm or cold? And it is warm. Is it the classic warm AMO, as they say, per Phil Klotzbach and his group, Klotzbach, and the Dr. William Gray, who unfortunately passed away recently within the past year, but they have pioneered that work too. You look at the Atlantic, is it warm or cold versus normal, and see if there's an El Nino. And if those two things are positive, those are the biggest influencers overall. And those two things are very positive right now for the most part. Absolutely no El Nino in the Atlantic. I mean, I just showed you. There it is. So then we look at this here and we say, well, it's just a matter of time. And then right now, though, this is a great time to use this period of unfavorability to do something. The next time you go to the grocery store, buy an extra gallon or two of cheap water. Just something to have on hand in case the water supply in your area is cut off. If you don't use the water now, you can water the plants with it. You can drink it later, whatever. But do that. Something simple. You've been putting off getting that extra gas can, the 5-gallon gas can. You go to Lowe's, Home Depot, or Walmart, they've got them now. They're not going to have them when Hurricane so-and-so is knocking on the door. Take it from somebody who knows what I'm talking about. I look at this and I say, okay, this is an unfavorable pattern overall, and therefore I'm going to do things to get ready, not only for my family, but in my business here as well, to get the equipment ready, the vehicles ready, the weather balloon project, everything. It's all, it all matters. It really does. And so when I see this very strong westerly winds and this giant upper level low, this is not the pattern for development. Convergent flow aloft, the air coming together, squashing development. Look at the satellite picture here. Just like yesterday, there's hardly any convection whatsoever across the tropics. Now is the time. You're going to have me coming in here and telling you about when the hurricanes are coming in a few weeks. Right now, I'm telling you they're not coming, and use this opportunity to get yourself ready. And I know it sounds cliche, that's like, well, you have to preach this stuff. Everybody says it. Believe me, the little things that you do now, it sounds goofy, but, when you sit down with the family for dinner, for lunch, whatever, for coffee at the Starbucks, whatever the case may be, just bring it up. Hey, yeah, what will we do if a hurricane heads our way, especially a severe hurricane that causes us to evacuate? Where are we going to meet up? Where are we staying? Are we staying at grandma's house, 50 miles up the road, or are we driving, as an example, from Savannah, Georgia over to Atlanta? You got to know this stuff now, not when the 5-day cone or whatever has something aiming right at the southeast coast. Then you start panicking, you get stressed out. Hurricanes, as exciting, and I use that in quotes, and interesting as they are, and do not mistake when I say exciting as the equivalent to being a positive thing. They have their positive roles in the ecology and how meteorology works and providing rainwater or whatever. All that aside, they are inherently a change in the norm, so they are exciting, they are interesting to track, but they make a lot of people nervous, and I think a lot of that could be dealt with if people would just, A, understand what they're up against, and B, have some kind of a plan in place. Don't keep waiting. It's so aggravating that I see people that are stressed out because they put it off, and they put it off until it was too late. So this is what you're looking for. This is great, a check mark in your favor to do something to get ready. And ask questions in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. Now's the time that I'm not busy where I can answer those questions within a day, sometimes less. All right? In the Pacific, the good news, despite all this activity, is it doesn't look like anything is going to directly impact land over here. Certainly not Hawaii. We have, see if I can remember everything, Greg, disheveled here, Irwin, trying to make a name for itself, and then we have Hurricane Hillary. And I am going to show you in just a moment a really cool GFS 7-day animation. It might not be exciting, so to speak, that these are going to stay out in the ocean. I mean, it's good they're not going to hit land, right? I mean, when they do hit land, we deal with it. But when they're not hitting land, that's when hurricanes can do their thing. As long as ships avoid them and all that good stuff, they're out there and they're interesting to watch. And I'm going to show you something with this in just a moment here that's absolutely amazing. But notice all this activity in the Pacific here, even the remnants of Fernanda included with that, and then some typhoon activity farther to the west, approaching Asia. It's very busy in the Pacific, and that's going to change over time. And once all of this starts to die down and we get rid of these systems and all of this upward motion over here, rising air in the atmosphere, then the Atlantic Basin will have an opportunity to come to life. But not until these systems really start to dissipate and we sort of change the pattern. Now here's what I want to show you. I'm going to put this into motion. This goes out to 7 days. We're at the 850 millibar level. This is Greg, this one's Irwin, and this one is Hillary. Watch the interaction of these two. This is so cool, and it makes you appreciate that they're probably not going to affect land, and so we don't have to worry about them too much, and we can say things like, hey, these are so cool. So here we go. I'm going to put this into motion. I'm going to speed it up. Check this out. Watch those two right there. That's absolutely incredible. They're going to dance around each other here. The Fujiwara effect. Irwin goes off to the south and east, swings around the north side of Hillary there as they both move off to the northwest. That's just incredible. And then look what happens. I talked about this yesterday. At the end of the loop, the circulation and the energy from Hurricane Hillary here absorbs the energy from smaller and weaker Irwin. As it swings around, all that energy gets pulled in, and you have one weaker system, not some giant superstorm like the movies like to create. And, once Hillary is done, if it was in a lower latitude, with the absorption of this energy here, assuming it even happened, the waters are going to be cooler up here and it'll die away. But once the absorption happens, then sometimes these systems can go on and become powerful later on. But they don't collide and just become one giant one where I have absorbed your energy. It doesn't necessarily work that way. But it's really fascinating to see that. I could watch that all day. Maybe we'll have a YouTube Live where you can just watch this all day. That's kind of a waste of resources. But you get the idea. That's really cool. And you notice a change from yesterday. Neither of these systems ends up here off of the Southern California coastline. So hopefully that'll continue to pan out, because the desert Southwest really doesn't need any moisture added to it. The semi-monsoonal flow, whatever you want to call it, out there has resulted in a lot of flooding, and we don't need any of these systems coming up that way, and it looks like that'll be the case over the next week, unless something weird happens. You never know. All right, so I want to point out something important here. Dr. Michael Ventris from the Weather Company, this guy's a PhD, all right? So I tend to, I have a BA, Bachelor of Arts in Geography, so he's definitely in a different echelon than me, and that's fine. That's why I like to learn from people. So he has a Twitter account, of course, good amount of followers, and he knows what he's talking about. Is he perfect? Well, of course not. He's a human being. But he does put out some really interesting stuff, and this one that he tweeted about 5 hours ago definitely got my attention. Here we go, one of the strongest convectively coupled atmospheric Kelvin waves of the summer is forecast to pass the Atlantic in the first week of August. Watch for MDR tropical cyclone outbreak around August 8th through the 20th. He's not putting that out to get subscribers or to boost his likes or his followers. He's putting that out almost as a forecast. I don't want to speak for him and say that it is a forecast, but right there it says watch for, and that's what we need to do. We need to watch for it. Let's see if this leads to the possibility of something happening. And let me put it into a different perspective. He is giving us warning, so to speak, an outlook, if you will, that in this time period, today it's July 25th. This is August 8th that he's talking about. That's remarkable that in 2017 we can finally look ahead and at least get an idea that something may be coming. And people can hem and haw about that it's alarming. You know what? That's fine. If it's alarming, at least somebody's got your attention, and you can't say you didn't know. And I think that's extremely important because we hear that way too often. It came without warning. I say a giant BS to that, because here's the warning in the modeling. And notice too, for everyone out there that says, well, it's probably the GFS. Nope. That's the ECMWF, and that's what it's forecasting with the 200 millibar anomalies. And essentially what this means is the active phase of the Kelvin wave in the atmosphere promotes enhanced convection, especially when they interact with westerly moving tropical waves. So there it is. And you scroll down the timeline, excuse me, and there's more evidence of this. Is funny here. Yeah, the Phantom Hurricane from recently, never worked out. Then he talks about current times right here. This is all negative for development. The strong suppressed Kelvin wave, and this was fairly well forecast as well, and it will pass. And then we go and we look down further in the timeline, and you look into the Pacific, and you can see that the Kelvin wave is sitting over here, and it's going to interact with these systems that we just talked about, especially Irwin and Hillary. And this is the energy pocket, so to speak. This is the convectively coupled Kelvin wave, and that sucker is going to be moving across. It's a slow process, and then when it does, it's kind of like lighting the gasoline vapors on fire. All right? I want to also mention this guy here, David. He is from Houston, I do believe. Quite a weather geek, and he asked for a shout out today. And you know, when people are passionate about the weather like I am, can't do it for everybody. I know I'm going to get a lot of requests, but today is his birthday, so we can offer a collective happy birthday to David. And I don't know if that's Segovia. It seems like that would be the logical way to pronounce it. So I'll just call him David. And happy birthday, buddy. And I think you're in Houston, if I remember correctly. And I hope you have a great birthday. Thanks for following along. It's so neat to see people with the same interest as I. I started out as a kid liking this stuff, especially when the Weather Channel first came on in the early 80s, and we had 24-hour weather. And then it grew from there. So you got to start somewhere. And so happy birthday to David, and thanks for following not only me, but your interest in the weather as a whole. You, my friend, won't be caught off guard by whatever. And if it's the Houston flooding that recurs often each year, at least when you're not having drought, to the possibility of hurricanes from year to year. You don't have to so much worry about ice storms and blizzards in the Houston area. Maybe an ice storm once in a blue moon. But the point is, David is connected, and that's cool to see, and I appreciate him asking for the shout out. So happy birthday, bud. All right. Well, that's it for me for today. I hope we all learned something. I certainly did, especially when I saw that tweet from Dr. Ventris this morning. Definitely an eye-opener. So we will be watching, and I will be back tomorrow to talk about even more. I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. As always, I appreciate your time and attention as we learn together. I'll be back with more for you tomorrow.